Hello, good afternoon. This is Al24 Breaking News, and coming up next in our program. Russia demands Ukraine, ex-Soviet nation, be barred from NATO and sets out tough terms in draft security document submitted to the US and its allies. More than 100 Marines discharged for refusing COVID vaccine as troops across services face discipline, with at least 27 members has been discharged in the Air Force. A Macron variant is spreading at lightning speed in Europe and will likely become dominant in France by the start of the next year. Tear gas was fired. Thousands of supporters of Sudan opposition forces for freedom and change movements who had gathered in the capital Al Khartoum. Hello again, those who are today's headline. First, the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance Ayman bin Abdulrahman arrived in Istanbul on Friday afternoon to take part as a representative of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, in the work of 3 days, or let me say, in the work of the third summit of the Turkish-African Partnership. The Turkey-African Partnership Summit gathered heads of the states and government at the Istanbul Convention Center. It held under the slogan "Strengthened Partnership for Mutual Development and Prosperity." The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community, Ramtan Mamre, held a work session in Istanbul on Friday with his Turkish counterpart, Mevlut Cavusoglu, during which he expressed their satisfaction with the level reached by the economic cooperation, particularly in trade and direct investments. The two parties also agreed during this meeting, which was held at the end of preparatory ministerial meeting for the third summit Turkey-African Partnership, to intensify their action to strengthen this cooperation. Algeria, in the second and 12th edition Algeria School Award, honored the Algerian historian Nasser al-Din Saidouni and his son, the architect Mouayyad Saidouni, to be the Algerian Scientist of the Year, a first time for the two scientists from one family. Nabil Khazini was there and has more to tell us.
Under the title "Algeria has its own scientists," the Algerian Scholar Award has awarded Nasruddin Saidouni and his son Mouawiya Saidouni to be the Algerian Scientist of the Year, a first time for two scientists from the same family. Nasruddin Saidouni is a historian who graduated from the University of Algiers and pursued his PhD at the University of Aix-en-Provence in France. Professor Saidouni worked as a professor in Jordan and in Kuwait, and lectured in many universities around the world, like at the universities of Tokyo, Beirut, Tehran and Qatar, before coming back to the University of Algiers. After that, Nasruddin Saidouni left his job as a professor and became a thinker and a historian. He was honored to be the Algerian Scholar of the Year.
I consider honoring me personally a part of honoring my son and all Algerian researchers, academians and intellectuals. My words express the ambition of an old man who lived in the past and wants to live the future through his imagination and hope. Thank you so much for your presence.
His son Mouawiya Saidouni was the second to be awarded the Algerian Scholar of the Year, an architect who graduated from the School of Architecture in Algiers before going to Paris to pursue his studies at the French Institute of Urban Planning. Mouawiya Saidouni studied the French urban heritage in Algiers. He perceived it as part of the French plan to overthrow the old Algerian style of architecture. This concept was called by Mouawiya Saidouni the language of architecture. Saidouni expressed his joy to be awarded the Algerian Scholar of the Year after his father.
I
would like to thank the Algerian Scholar Award Foundation for honoring me. The Algerian Scholar Award has a message of honoring science and scientists. Thank you for all of you.
The Algerian Scholar Award Foundation, the organizer of the event, expressed their honor to award Algerian scientists, saying that new editions may be more diversified.
This is the 12th edition for this honoring scholars and scientists from in Algeria in the different fields, in several different fields, and we are working hard to make these peoples known by our community, our country. Our objective is to discover and to get out a lot of scientific communities. Because we believe in collective works.
The last edition of the Algerian Scholar Award was the 12th edition. Several Algerian scientists were honored with this award, like Abul Qasim Saadallah, Kamal Yusuf Toumi, and Belqasim Habba.
Congratulations to Saidouni family. So, according to Human Rights Watch in the Western Sahara, Moroccan authorities continue to harass activists supporting Sahrawi self-determination, prevent gathering, and obstruct the work of local human rights non-governmental organizations. In the same line of thought, in the hours leading the Saturday's FIFA Arab Cup match between Algeria and Morocco, Laayoune was deadly quiet. Moroccan authorities had issued a curfew in Western Sahara's largest city, with cafes, restaurants, and any venue that might show the football game closed for business. The Algeria shared by Sahrawi because of its support for an independent Western Sahara, which Morocco, seen as the occupying power. People came out onto the streets to celebrate, but as journalists and human rights defenders told Middle East Eye, Moroccan security and police forces were waiting for them, attacking some Sahrawis and detaining and beating others at police headquarters. On Friday, Russia presented a proposal to reduce tension with the West to radically reduce the influence of the United States and NATO and countries of the former Soviet Union. In return, Washington expressed its willingness to discuss this proposal, but in consultation with European allies. Hussein Burkan on what follow.
Russia presented Friday two proposals to reduce the influence of the United States and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO in its neighborhood, calling for the start of talks as soon as possible to prevent an escalation of tension in Europe. The unusual Russian move in terms of diplomats publishing documents in public comes amid growing Western concerns about Moscow's intentions in Ukraine and fears of a possible Russian military attacks on it. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov stated in Moscow that Russia is ready to begin talks on security guarantees with the US immediately.
We trust that, on the basis of our draft treaty and agreement, the United States will enter into serious negotiations with Russia in the very near future. We are ready to go to a third country for talks with the United States immediately, even if it's tomorrow, literally tomorrow. The crucial talks should be based on two draft documents that we are looking forward to promoting and expecting a constructive response from the US. We say we need to get security guarantees, and they tell us withdraw troops within our own territory. But thank God, they don't tell us yet to what distance we should withdraw.
Russia's demands, which West experts characterized as maximalist and unlikely to be accepted, including the following legal commitment from the US and NATO.
No eastern expansion of NATO. No military cooperation with former Soviet states, including Ukraine and other countries in Eastern Europe, the South Caucasus and Central Asia. Withdrawal of forces to position NATO occupied in 1997 before the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, Montenegro and North Macedonia were members. No deploying armed forces, heavy bombers, surface warships, or intermediate-range and shorter-range missiles outside of NATO territory.
For its part, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg stated that NATO is prepared to work on strengthening confidence-building measures should Russia take concrete steps to reduce tensions.
We have received Russia's recent proposals. We are clear that any dialogue with Russia would also need to address NATO's concerns about Russia's actions, be based on the core principles and documents of European security, and take place in consultation with NATO's European partners, such as Ukraine. NATO allies have also made clear that should Russia take concrete steps to reduce tensions, we are prepared to work on strengthening confidence-building measures.
These proposals come after last week's virtual summit between US President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, where Putin revealed that Moscow is interested in getting firm legal guarantees from its Western partners.
All of the U.S. military services have now begun disciplinary actions and discharges for troops who have refused to get the mandate coronavirus vaccine. Officials said an army has 2,000 unvaccinated forces at risk of being removed from service. The Marine Corps said it has discharged 103 Marines so far for refusing the vaccine. And the Army said it has reprimanded more than 2,700 soldiers and will begin discharge proceedings in January. The Air Force said earlier this week that 27 airmen had been discharged from refusing the vaccine order. It is not clear how many could end up being discharged, but according to the services, at least 30,000 services members are not yet vaccinated. And joining me live, Mr. Nabil Aghouil, to talk more about this topic. Mr. Hafid, hello with that. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for inviting me today.
Mostly welcome. Mr. Hafid, how do you explain this act from the government of US by discharging their soldiers? This is something I believe irresistible. Don't you think so?
Well, I mean, the U.S. government, as any other government, can impose that on its military personnel. Now, in the United States, the president or the government cannot impose vaccination on the population. That's not legal. The government has no right to do that, as in some other parts of the world. But for the military or for employees of the federal government, it can do that. In the case of the military, it is an issue of protecting the lives of the rest of the military. I mean, if you're not vaccinated and you are in service, you can infect the other soldiers, which becomes a major national security issue.
Mr. Hafid, if we take into consideration that this act and this discharge that happened to the soldiers, if we take it into consideration, how can we consider the normal people that are going to be treated by the government?
Well, look, the United States Constitution gives American citizens absolute right to refuse vaccination or anything else. The U.S. government has no power over citizens. But when it comes to the military, it's quite a different issue and it falls under quite a different legal system. But I can assure you, no president at any time or any government in the United States will be able to impose anything on any American citizen. That will be thrown out of a court the minute it shows up. American citizens have absolute right to refuse any orders from their government.
Mr. Hafid, as last question, don't you think this is kind of controversial because and a sort of contradiction, because we all know that USA is the country that calls for democracy. Now, if people refuse, they refuse. There is no need to force something on them.
Yeah, that's correct for the rest of the population. But we're here talking about the military, which is different. The military has to be able to follow orders, and in this case, it is dangerous if you do not vaccinate, because it means you're going to put the lives of the other soldiers around you at risk. So it is absolutely correct that they can impose that. I don't see that to be in any way in contradiction to a democratic or the rights of the individuals to refuse or accept these issues. So we need to separate very clearly between military personnel and between a regular citizen.
Mr. Hafid Aghouil joining me live from USA. Thank you so much for your intervention. To a different matter now, COVID-19 cases rates are holding at high plateau in the US. More than 102 21,000 new COVID cases and 1,286 deaths are recorded every day, along with over 68,000 people currently hospitalized with COVID-19. New York State reported the highest single-day count of new COVID-19 cases with 21,027.
And I thank everyone who's doing the responsible thing, not just for themselves, but their co-workers, their customers, their friends, and their families by getting vaccinated, getting the booster shot. Please get boosted. We need that extra layer of protection. And those who are wearing the mask, I thank you. I don't take this for granted. I thank you for being so supportive of our effort to make sure that we, number one, protect the health of New Yorkers, but number two, we protect the health of our economy.
According to French Premier Jean Castex, the Omicron form is growing at lightning pace across Europe and will likely become dominant in France by the start of the new year. Meanwhile, France is tightening the rules for UK holidaymakers, or let me say holidaymakers, over worries about the increase in COVID cases. Islam Sid on what follow will clarify.
French Prime Minister Jean Castex warned on Friday, hours before France imposed new restrictions on travelers coming from the United Kingdom, which the latter has so far been exposed to the hardest hit in the region, with nearly 15,000 confirmed Omicron cases. Starting from 17 December, visitors to France must give a compelling reason to enter the country. This applies whether or not they are fully vaccinated. No travel for tourism or business reasons. All travels from the UK must register the address where they will stay. All arrivals will have to provide a negative COVID test less than 24 hours old and isolate for at least 2 days if they have a second negative test. The restrictions do not apply to French nationals, their spouses and their children. According to the latest EU statistics, Europe has already witnessed more than 89 million cases and 1.5 million COVID-related deaths. France is not the only country tightening its controls. Earlier this week, Italy, Greece and Portugal announced that visitors from EU will need to present a negative test result on arrival, even those who have been vaccinated. Hours before the new rules applied, Mr. Castex said the voyage limits were part of a sequence of procedures being brought in to stem the tide of infections. They contain shortening the gap between the second and third dose of vaccine and demanding a full vaccination to enter restaurants in addition to long-distance public transport. All official New Year's Eve celebrations and fireworks shows were annulled. Mr. Castex also said his government would put new phases to tackle vaccine hesitancy next year, in which he said that not acceptable that the refusal of few million French people to be vaccinated puts the life of an entire country at risk. On Saturday, France's health minister, Olivier Véran, stated that between 7 and 10% of new confirmed infections in the country are believed to be the Omicron variant.
More news concerning the spread of the new Omicron variant all around the world with Zara Farjani.
A new study by the Imperial College London suggests that the risk of COVID-19 reinfection is more than 5 times higher with Omicron than with the Delta variant. Researchers said that there was no sign that the infections were any milder, though data on hospitalization is still very limited. The number of COVID cases in the UK broke records for a third consecutive day on Friday, after infections surpassed 93,000 for the first time since March 2020, with the fast-spreading Omicron variant intensifying concerns over the trajectory of the pandemic. Irish authorities have announced a fresh list of restrictions to contain the spread of the Omicron variant amid the global surge of the COVID cases. Under the new restrictions, hospitality venues will have to shut down at 8 p.m. and there should be no indoor events after the curfew. Dutch health experts have advised the Dutch government to adopt a strict lockdown to stem the spread of the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. The concerns are rising to the new variant, which appeared just as previous wave of infection in the Netherlands. South Africa's health minister said the government believed that vaccines and high level of prior COVID-19 infection were helping to keep disease milder in a wave driven by the Omicron variant. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the spike in cases of Omicron was scary, while the country's top medical official made clear the healthcare system could soon be swamped. COVID-19 case numbers are rapidly increasing in Canada, with several of the 10 provinces reporting big jumps as Omicron replaces Delta as the dominant variant. According to Pfizer, COVID-19 pandemic could extend through 2023. They announced plans to develop a 3-dose vaccine treatment for children aged 2 to 16, a move that could delay its authorization.
European powers and the talks coordinator said as negotiations suspended for at least 10 days. Negotiators at indirect talks between Iran and the United States have just weeks to reach an agreement on rescuing the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, after they have made little noticeable progress since they resumed more than 2 weeks ago for the first time in a row. France will ask the European Commission to start legal proceeding against the United Kingdom over post-Brexit fishing license. Paris threatens litigation last week, calling on the UK to issue license to the 100 applications still pending ahead of the European Commission deadline on December the 10th. The move by France's European Affairs Minister is the latest of a long-running dispute on fishing license for French boats in the British waters. Boris Conservative Party lost its North Shropshire seat, having held it for almost 200 years. The loss came pressure intensifies against the British Prime Minister. Miriam Ziani on what follow.
Boris Johnson's Conservative Party was defeated in a by-election. Since its establishment in 1983, North Shropshire has always sent a Conservative member of Parliament to London, and the Conservatives re-won the seat in 2019 with a very comfortable 23,000 votes. In her victory speech, Liberal Democrat candidate Ellen Morgan, who won by 6,000 votes, had a message for Johnson. The winner, Ellen Morgan, overturned a Tory majority of almost 23,000, declaring that the party is over for the Prime Minister.
Tonight, the people of North Shropshire have spoken on behalf of the British people. They've said loudly and clearly, Boris Johnson, the party is over. Your government, run on lies and bluster, will be held accountable. It will be scrutinised, it will be challenged, and it can and will be defeated.
The Prime Minister has been embroiled in scandals over breaking lockdown rules last winter, and he recently faced a major rebellion in Parliament from his own party's members of Parliament. Conservative Party Chairman Oliver Dowden commented on Liberal Democrat victory and said he doesn't think it will change anything.
Voters in North Shropshire were fed up, and they've given us a kicking. And I want voters to know that we as a Conservative Party, and I as a Conservative Party chairman, have heard that message. This was a by-election in unique circumstances that began with the resignation of the incumbent MP over sleaze allegations and continued with numerous stories that you don't need me to repeat around alleged parties and so on. The only point I would make is that mid-term, if you're expecting a surge of government, of the new government, of the Labour Party, you would have expected them to win this by-election. In fact, they sank from a strong second place. So this feels more like a mid-term by-election and not like a sea change.
The North Shropshire seat has existed since the 1830s and has always had a Conservative member of Parliament until today.
A 2-day rise over the treatment of the coronavirus cluster, hundreds of prisoners set fire to Thai jail, with some prisoners wounded as officers sought to restore order. About 400 prisoners in southern Thai jail went on riots, demanding that prisoners with the coronavirus be removed due to the overcrowded Thai prisons that struggle to curb the spread of this virus. More than 18,000 troops and emergency personnel and helping with search rescue efforts in Philippines as people call for basic necessities. The death toll from Typhoon Ray increased to 21 as typhoon battered the central and southern regions. More than 300,000 people were forced to abandon their homes. The typhoon is now over South China Sea and on its way to Vietnam. Authorities in Indonesia raised the alert level for the highest volcano on Java Island, saying Mount Semeru could have up again. Indonesian Geological Agency said on Saturday that it picked up increasing activity that could trigger an avalanche of lava and searing gas. A sudden eruption of the volcano earlier this month left 48 people dead and 36 missing till now. Flash floods in the northern Iraq killed at least 8 people on Friday. Iraqi Kurdish authorities said another 3 people were missing after heavy rain caused the floods in remote areas south on the city of Erbil. More in this report.
Provincial Governor Omid Kushnau said on Friday that women and children were among those killed after the heavy overnight swept through a number of residential areas. Civil defense spokesman said many people have forced to leave their homes, also warning that the death toll could still rise, and search are ongoing for missing people. In Erbil, according to accounts, rivers of muddy water rushed along highways. Buses, trucks and tankers were washed away by the storm waters, with some toppled into their side. Iraq has been hit by successions of extreme waters events. It has endured blistering temperatures and repeated droughts in recent years, but has also experienced intense flood, made worse when torrential rains falls on sand-backed earth.
The United Nations warned all parties in Ethiopia's conflict about the abuses and warned that generalized violence could erupt with regional ramification. Ethiopia did not immediately respond to the claims and refused to cooperate. Miriam Ziani on what followed.
The United Nations called Ethiopians to pull back from their year-old war and denounced the severe human rights violations in Ethiopia. According to the United Nations Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights, Nada al-Nashif, an estimated 5,000 to 7,000 people have been jailed as a result of the state of emergency and its excessively broad provision. Al-Nashif also condemned increasing hate speech and incitement to violence by federal and regional authorities, as well as other public figures, particularly against Tigrayans and members of the Oromo community. Zanabi Kabide, Ethiopia's ambassador to the Council, did not comment on the accusations of detentions, but said the UN had failed to condemn the series of abuses by rebellious forces from the northern Tigray region. In a speech, the Ethiopian ambassador stated that Ethiopia is being targeted and singled out at the Human Rights Council for defending a democratically elected government, the peace and the future of its people. The UN Rights Forum will debate a resolution draft proposed by the European Union that condemns abuses perpetrated by all parties and, if adopted, would establish an international commission of rights experts on Ethiopia to conduct additional investigations and report back after a year. Zanabi rejected the motion and stated that the government would not cooperate with any such committee. He also stated that the state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has previously collaborated with the United Nations Human Rights Council to investigate allegations of human rights violations and was prepared to do so again. According to a joint inquiry published last month by the UN, Human Rights Office and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, all sides in Tigray's conflict committed abuses that might be considered war crimes.
After mass protests erupted following a military coup in which the military reinstated Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, who had been under house arrest, tear gas was fired at thousands of supporters of Sudanese opposition forces of freedom and change movement who had gathered in the capital Khartoum. Witnesses said that the source of the tear gas was unclear till now. To sport now, Tunisia and Algeria will square off at Al Bayt Stadium in Al Khor Club pitch in less than 4 hours from now. A game under the title of the 2021 FIFA Arab Cup final. This will be the 55th overall meeting. No surprises here, as Algiers' team game as well have ended up in a draw. Their last game took place on June 11, 2021, and it ended up in 2-0 win for the Algerian Warriors. It promises to be an even more exciting clash that they meet for the second time this year. This time it determined the new FIFA Arab Cup champion in this game. And as I have just been told by my team, Egypt has just lost the game, and now Qatar, the host, take the third place. In another matter, and a remarkable gesture yesterday evening before the final of Arab Cup, a veterans match between the Arab football legends and FIFA world legends was in the menu in this regard. The ex-Algerian international players Rafiq Halish, Rafiq Saifi and Rabah Majer were invited to participate in this game, but unfortunately ended up withdrawing because of the presence of the coach Abraham Grant, who is a Zionist football manager. To this latter presence in this game for managing the FIFA team pushed the former Algerian team captains to leave their participation with the world stars such as Andrea Pirlo, Yaya Touré and Cafu without entering the pitch. Algeria has nothing to do with Zionists. So, to this end, let's have a check again for our main stories. Russia demands Ukraine, ex-Soviet nations, to be barred from NATO and set out tough terms in draft security documents submitted in the US and its allies. More than 100 Marines discharged for refusing COVID vaccine as troops across services face discipline, while the Air Force has discharged at least 27 members. COVID-19 as well as the Omicron variant is spreading at lightning speed in Europe and will likely become dominant in France by the start of the next year. Tear gas was fired at thousands of supporters of Sudanese opposition forces for freedom and change movements who had gathered in the capital, Al-Khartoum. That's all for now. Our dear colleague Nadia Khasmi will meet you at 6. Peace be upon you.